Good evening, everyone. It's Necro Thursday. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. As we record this, Jeff and I are getting ready for the 4th of July weekend. And so how's it going, Jeff?
Pretty good, man. How about you?
I got to say, man, life's good.
Yeah.
Things are going well. Excited to have 4 days off from work, and I have like a nothing planned. I'm not doing anything. I'm just disappearing for the next 4 days.
That's great. I wish I could say the same. I have the 4th off, and I think I'm pretty much working every day in July.
Oh, dude, that's a lot.
Other than Tuesday. Yeah, you got to make that money, Mike.
So what?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, man, it's like there should be laws against working people that hard,
Yeah, well, I wouldn't disagree with you. But I've had a few setbacks. We haven't recorded an episode together in quite a while. It feels like.
Yeah, yeah. I know that you had some stuff you had to deal with, and that's okay. Me and Mike picked up the slack.
Yes, I appreciate it, and I've been enjoying listening to the episodes. As you said on one of the episodes, I don't know if anyone listening right now heard, I got attacked by a dog.
Yeah, how's that coming? You you healed, you recovered, what's going on?
Yeah, I have not yet turned into a werewolf, which is a little disappointing, to tell you the truth. But I'm fine. My hand is healed up. There's going to be a scar there for quite a while. But it is what it is, man. It's one of those things you just never really prepare for. You never think you're going to be attacked by a dog indoors. Pretty crazy.
I have to say, I'm not prepared for getting attacked by an animal either.
Yeah, I mean, it was over before I even knew what happened. And now every time I see a dog, I'm a little on edge. Whereas before, I didn't think about it too much.
What's cool, actually, is that this whole Necro voicemail thing has actually become part of the show. Yeah.
I've been enjoying hearing the listeners and their opinions and their recommendations. It's it's fun. At first I didn't know what to think. I was like, oh, this could be all right, but it's turned out to be quite cool. I'm very happy we're doing this.
See, I suspected that people would have some kind of interesting things to say. Either that or it would just be like pure hatred, nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And either one would have been fine, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So before we get rolling, I just want to shout everyone out. Of course, we are part of the Illuminati of podcasting. And, of course, that's the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Kicking off the week, we got Brandon Legion coming at you on Mondays. And he gives you Horrorwolf 666. On Tuesday, we have Jackie Smith with the premier extreme music podcast, the only one that I actually listen to, and that's Into the Necrosphere. Every now and then I'll check out the Heavy Hole podcast, brought to you by Big Will out on Long Island. Wednesday is Everything Went Black, which is my first attempt at doing podcasts. It's been doing it for a while, kind of ebbing and flowing, but for the last few years, it's been a weekly show. Thursday, of course, is Necro Thursday, which is today, the day that you're listening to this. Friday, Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper, delivers Break the Apocalypse. He takes Saturday off, and Sunday, the Dark Lord, Carl Hikara, delivers Soul Knocks. And that's like a pretty goddamn full week of podcasting content brought to you every week.
It's amazing, man.
Yeah, I feel like it's growing. We got a thing going on here, and it's growing and getting stronger every day.
Absolutely. And it's good to see these other podcasts pick up, get a little momentum behind them. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Have you checked anything out over the last few weeks since we last spoke?
As a matter of fact, I have.
Oh, cool. All right.
I'll try to keep it brief. Yeah. I mentioned before on the podcast, I got tickets to see Earth, the band Earth, perform the album Earth 2 in its entirety. And that happened a couple weeks ago. I went. And, anyone who's known me for a long time knows that Earth 2 is a very important album to me. And what are the chances that, this album from like 1990, 92 or something like that, 93, that they'd be playing it live 30 years later in Austin, Texas. Like, they're a Seattle band. Like, a show like that, what you think would happen in New York, Seattle, LA, but it's happening here where I live. So that was it was really something, man. It was everything I could have hoped it would be. It was basically the record live with minimal visuals. But, I mean, it was just incredible. I was kind of in awe the whole time.
That's an interesting record to perform live, man, especially since I feel like so much of that recording might have been, like, improvised maybe,
Yeah, and, I saw, like, on Instagram, like, their setup for this tour, and it was, combo amps and things like that. And I'm like, man, how are you going to get that sound out of a combo amp? Because it's really just loud feedback and very, very slow chord progressions. But I got to say, man, it filled the room. Yeah, perfect. It was not quite as loud as I would have wanted it to be, but that was maybe my only complaint. But it sounded perfect. Everything was balanced really well. It was in quadraphonic sound. And it was in a church. Like, there was pews and everything and Bibles in the seats.
That's interesting, man. That kind of makes sense, I guess,
Yeah, but man, it was a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity to witness that, and I feel very fortunate that I got to see that. Amazing. I've seen, the band's Son, which is somewhat of a tribute to the album Earth 2. But it was great to see, like, the actual guy doing it, and it did not disappoint at all.
It's a tour, huh?
Yeah, well, they were on tour, but they were only doing the Earth 2 set in Austin. It was part of the Oblivion Fest, which is a thing that happens every year here. It's like kind of like a very mini South by Southwest, very focused on metal and stuff like that, or like, underground music. Like, it's happening over like 3 or 4 clubs over the course of 3 days. And Godflesh played one day, and a bunch of people played.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Hacker. Yeah, it's every year, and I was glad to finally get out of the house and win.
Speaking of Godflesh, man, I think I need to. They're playing Philly, I think.
Yeah, you should go.
I need to go because I like the new album that just came out. I like it quite a bit.
Do you? Yeah. It's pretty good. It's very nostalgic, I think is the word I'm looking for. It really goes back to the old days, like very reminiscent of Pure, that era of Godflesh.
I was thinking the same thing, and that's why I feel like I need to go check them out. I pretty much see them every opportunity I get, really,
Yeah, and you don't get a lot of opportunities to see them. Justin is not big on touring, and Godflesh only comes around once in a great while, so...
I feel like the last time they played in New York was the time we played with them, actually.
Oh, yeah. That was before the pandemic. I remember seeing the set list from that show and being jealous. Like, damn, that was a great set list.
Yeah, it was fantastic, actually. It was great. And it was just a great show. And just overall, it was cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Other things to mention, I watched a movie I can't recommend enough, the Solaris remake by Steven Soderbergh.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have, yes.
Yeah, the original Solaris is my favorite science fiction film of all time. But the remake, I got to say, is not far behind it. It's literally half as long as the original, but really still delivers. It's a heavy movie emotionally, not horror, obviously, but I think if you're a fan of this show, you can find things to appreciate about it. And it's for it being a remake. It's really up there. It's probably top 10 sci-fi movies for sure.
It's definitely one of those rare instances where the remake is good and different enough from the original, and you can enjoy it pretty much on its own merits,
Yeah, absolutely. And Steven Soderbergh's such an interesting director. You never really know what you're going to get from him, and that is up there with amongst my favorites that he's made. Probably my favorite film that he's made. And other than that, I'm doing yet another pass of True Detective. I've been watching those again, and I know since we've done this podcast, I think this is my second time going through True Detective.
Actually, I'm about to do the same because Ralph and I are going to do kind of like an analysis of the first season on Everything Went Black, Patreon, Long Shadows. It's like the weird fiction segment that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made notes.
I mean,
I have like a running like sort of essay that I've written on the first season with all the references and connections to the different, Yellow King and the Legati stuff and all that kind of, stuff.
Yeah. Season 1 is, just next level TV. It's just so good. But
I think about it all the time, actually, to be honest. I find myself thinking about that season quite a bit, especially after, like, we had the Nightlands festival a few weeks ago, which was and Cadabra Records is all about like Thomas Legati. Like the big thing was Portrait of Apocalypse, or Pictures of Apocalypse, his new book of poetry, which I read twice, before the festival, and the whole like the oddness and weirdness of his writing always makes me think back to True Detective about, Errol and the whole, projection of everything and how that projection of his internal world manifested itself in reality, which is like a very Legati-esque concept,
Yeah, oh, totally. And I mean, at one point, Matthew McConaughey's character almost like quotes Legati's some of his writing, like his philosophy on life. It seems like it came straight out of one of his books, specifically "Conspiracy Against the Human Race."
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that whole pessimistic, like Schopenhauer-esque philosophy that he put forth in that book, that his philosophy book, basically, it's a nonfiction book.
Yes, correct. But man, yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that. I'm just obsessed with season 1. And for the record, I liked season 2. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't know. I just like it. I don't get the hate for it.
I don't hate it. I actually like it as well, and I like it more after watching it a few times. And I got a funny story about that.
Oh, yeah?
I went through a breakup a couple of years ago. And I remember I actually got drunk in my apartment by myself, and it was like a weekend, and I put on season 1, and I passed out on the couch, and when I woke up, season 2 was playing, and I was like, I'm like, oh, and I was so just hungover, I was just like, I just watched it again, and in that state, it was like the perfect thing to watch, and ever since that moment, I've been like very, very, very much a fan of it. And I don't drink that often, man. So like when I something like that happens, it's an extreme circumstance. You know what I mean? And, yeah. And it doesn't take a lot of alcohol to get me that drunk, really. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I've known you 27 years now, and I think I've seen you drunk maybe, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, probably about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, man. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been checking out. What about you?
Since I moved, man, it's funny. Like I just been trying to settle in here and unpack and organize everything, and working my full-time job and going to band practice and everything. I haven't had a chance to watch too many things, but I mentioned this before. I did start watching the new Black Mirror episodes on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're definitely worth checking out for sure.
Okay, because I was really disappointed with the last bunch of episodes.
From the previous season or from the new season?
I haven't watched any of the new seasons. Yeah. I think the previous season there was a Miley Cyrus one that season, whatever that was. It just was kind of wall-to-wall bad, which is so disappointing because I think like the first couple seasons in the Christmas special of that show is some of the best stuff I've ever seen. Like,
the funny thing is, like, the first episode I didn't really like that much. The first episode conceptually I liked it, but I ended up not liking the first episode of the new season. There's like a funny thing. After you watch, maybe we could talk about it. But there's like, it's a relationship one where this lady's in like this relationship with some dud, you know, and like she's talking about, you know, fantasizing about her like bad boy, like sex machine, like ex-boyfriend. And then when you finally see this guy, he looks like the kind of guy that a woman would not fantasize about. Like he looks like this dude that would be the one who wouldn't be able to like keep his girlfriend. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And
like, it looked like he looked like the guy that the girlfriend would be fantasizing about somebody else with. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So.
It's kind of weird too. Reality seems to be catching up to Black Mirror.
Yeah. It has to do with texting and and AI and fucking. It kind of had a cool ending, but I don't know. There was like a lot of things that I thought were really funny that didn't really add up to me. Aside from that, I started reading this book called The Troop by Nick Cutter, and Nick Cutter brought us The Deep, a very, very intense book that I read last year, and Brandon Legion actually kind of turned me on to Nick Cutter, and I've been into it. And I actually turned our mutual friend Selden Hunt onto Nick Cutter, and he's obsessed with him now.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So when you say The Deep, you're not talking about the book from the 70s. The film was based on it.
No. There's probably like 400 books named The Deep, but that's
yeah.
I mean, it's not a very original title. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. That's cool. I got to read more, Mike. I'm really, I have all these books. I'm surrounded by all these books in this room that I do this podcast in, and I haven't read shit.
It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things to do, man. Even more than watching movies, actually.
Oh, when I was a touring musician, I read all the time. I'd read bring a couple novels, a couple anthologies with me, and I just read those like long 8, 10, 12-hour drives. I would just read, and since I stopped touring, my reading is just almost non-existent.
You want to get in some voicemails now? We got the Necro phone.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. All right, so Necro phone. If you guys want to call us and leave us a voicemail, the number is 908-913-0782. That's 908-913-0782. Leave a voicemail, and it's cool. A lot of people have been calling. We got a lot of return callers, and I love when it's, we're hearing from you guys every week, and excellent recommendations for stuff, and we're working through those. We've actually done some of the movies that you guys have recommended, and we're always open to those ideas, especially if people want to hear it. And sometimes it's nice to hear from people, so the first guy up, we got Dave.
Hey, Necromaniacs, what's going on? It's Dave Berardi calling you guys back. Had a question for you guys this time around. I'm a fan of, practical effects and gore in horror movies. Hopefully that doesn't make me some sort of a psychopath or anything like that, but just curious, what would you guys rank as maybe your top 3 most disturbing films that you guys have ever seen, or the most disturbing film that you guys have ever seen? I've seen some pretty crazy films in my time on this planet, and I think that those American guinea pig ones, I've seen 2 of them because there's 2 up on Tubi. I've seen American Guinea Pig Sacrifice. That one is, as Mike Scandato said about Found, that one is definitely a shower movie. And American Guinea Pig Song of Solomon, that one's pretty messed up too. The gore and practical effects, I think, in both are out of this world. Sacrifice kind of leaves you in pain after, I think. Song of Solomon, even the acting wasn't so cool, wasn't so good. I think it's one of the most effed up exorcism films that I've ever seen. And then, of course, you got your Serbian films, your August Undergrounds, all that kind of stuff. So that's my take, but I'm curious to get your guys' take. What are the most disturbing films that you think you've ever seen? And, yeah, once again, love what you guys are doing. And, cheers. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
All right, so Dave and his 3 disturbing films. So do you get put any thought into that, Jeff? You got any films that disturbed you?
I put a lot of thought into it. Now, I was trying to come up with the perfect one. I mean, different things disturb different people, you know? So, like, movies like the Wicker Man, Midsummer, Kill List, I find that stuff really disturbing to me. You know, the human sacrifice or you're a part of a larger plan and you don't know it. That stuff really gets under my skin. But the more I thought about it, the movie that got under my skin more than anything else, more than Martyrs, is Requiem for a Dream.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, not really a horror movie in the traditional sense, but there is an argument to be made that is a horror movie.
Yes, I mean, I read the Selby book before I saw the film, and definitely powerful. All of his writing has like a very disturbing edge to it, but that one specifically had a real uncomfortable thing because of the relationship with the mother and, you know, the descent of everyone into ruin.
Yeah, I mean, that scene between Ellen Bernstein and what's his name there, Jared Leto, when they're in the kitchen and you can tell his mom's like kind of fucked up, and they had that conversation. Oh man, that gets me every time. And the movie just has one of the most depressing endings I've ever seen. And I remember watching that in my apartment in Boston, and that movie pretty much ruined like the next few weeks of my life. It's all I could think about. But it's so good. I haven't watched it in a while. It might be due for a rewatch, but I gotta say, man, that got under my skin more than anything I've ever seen. It affected me on a deep level. What about you?
Well, I got 3 because I think Dave asked us
okay.
for 3. So in no particular order, we got Serbian film.
Okay.
Which Dave talked about in his voicemail. And that one really did. The ending of that one blew me. It was fucking ruined the whole trip. You know what I mean? Like, it really disturbed me at the end. Found.
It was such a...
I'm sorry.
Found. Okay.
Yeah, what were you going to say? What were you going to say about Serbian film?
I wasn't expecting it to actually be a good movie. I thought it was going to be like a Saw kind of shock value freak show kind of thing. It's a good movie. It's well made, and it made the film that much more disturbing because of it.
Exactly, you know, and for the first like half of the movie, nothing happens really extreme. It's just character building, and like, you know, it you get to know the characters really well. And then it just goes goes crazy at the end, you know, towards the end. Yeah,
I watched that with Peter Ferris, who's been on your podcast, Everything Went Black, a few times. Mm-hmm. And we were like drinking beer, like getting ready, like preparing ourselves mentally for it. And I still felt terrible after watching it. Like, wow, I can't take that back. That's the thing I've seen now.
You know, Found fucked me up too, actually. That one was a movie that me and Mike did. And, yeah, the ending, man. Once again, that ending was so disturbing. And I think the ending juxtaposed with the sort of coming of age aspect of the film. Like, there was like a part of the movie that was... it almost felt like a Stephen King sort of short story or film. And then it just got super dark and brutal at the end and very uncomfortable. And that definitely disturbed me.
Okay.
And then, of course, probably the godfather of all disturbing films is Salò by Pasolini.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I thought you were going to say something else, Mike.
What do you think I was going to say?
Martyrs.
You know, I thought about it, too, because that one, like... disturbing but thought-provoking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Black. Like the ending of that was like one of the most nihilistic endings. But then again, the more you think about it, it's like, was it really that dark? I mean, it was definitely dark. But the fact is, you don't know what happens at the end of the movie. Right. You know, and it's left up to you to project what you think happened on the film at the end of the film.
Did you and Mike cover Martyrs?
Oh yeah, ages ago. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say that'd be a fun one to do, but I don't know if I can bring myself to watch that again.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I've only seen it twice.
Yeah,
It's an ordeal trying to get through it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good list. Well, I said Requiem for a Dream. Obviously Martyrs would be on that for me. Have you seen Funny Games by Michael Haneke?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I could see that being on there too.
That one really got it. I mean, he remade his own film too, and which was bizarre. But you know what? If I had to go with the third, The Vanishing.
Yeah. The end. That's another one that it gets you at the end too, in The Vanishing.
Yeah, it's all about the ending.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most horrific endings ever. I mean, that one really, oof. Yeah, tough watch, that one.
I have seen Song of Solomon. That's one of those like unearthed films, American guinea pig movies. And it's a possession film, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the dude from Angel Corpse is in it, as well as Jim Van Bever, one of my favorite film people ever.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that with those movies.
Apparently, it's on Tubi.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And next up, we got Mike from Telford, PA, and Mike has allowed us to play his message, and I thank him for that because he's a big supporter, and I feel like he's a big part of this show since we talk about his voicemails every week. So here's Mike.
Yo, Necro Hoods. This is Mike from Telford. I'm currently laid up with fucking pneumonia. I'm on some heavy duty fucking antibiotics, and I'm so fucking weak that when I go to drink something, I'm like shaky and shit. But I did get to hear the episode today. It was a great one. If you guys think this is suitable with me sounding like I do, go for it. I love the show, and if it helps, do what you gotta do. I appreciate you fellas. The only recommendation I have this week is on Apple Music. There's 2 Dennis Wheatley novels on there read by Christopher Lee, Strange Conflicts and The Devil Rides Out. It's really killer. I've listened to each one of them twice because I'm just fucking laying around like a loaf. So hope you guys have a good weekend. I was looking forward to a long weekend. Oh, we're going to head up to upstate New York and be with my family and get drunk, and that ain't happening now. So hope you guys have a better holiday weekend. And I look forward to next Thursday. All right, brothers.
So, dude, I hope you feel better. It's a bummer that you got sick right before a holiday weekend. And, man, just pulling for you. And that's good to know about the Dennis Wheatley stuff on Apple Music. I think I will check that out for sure.
Totally.
Let's put another marker here.
All right.
All right, so that brings us to this week's feature film. And, of course, we're talking about Mimic 3. It seems random, right, that we come up with this one?
Yeah, I was trying to think last night while I was watching it. I was like, why are we watching this?
Okay.
I think you guys were talking about it on the other podcast.
Yes. When all right, back to Nightlands weekend. I'm down in Philadelphia staying with Rennie because Rennie accompanied me on that, and we did that episode from my car outside in the parking lot.
I love that.
Yeah, so Rennie was like, "Have you ever seen Mimic 3?" And I was like, "I didn't even know they made 3 of them. I only know the first one. I didn't see the second one." And
same.
So we watched it the morning before we went to go back to the festival. And it was like such an interesting offbeat version of a sequel to that film. And he saw it in a theater. They showed that in a theater somewhere that's on some festival that he went to.
Oh, okay. This doesn't have seen it in the theater vibes to it at all.
Well, no, this was released direct to DVD actually.
Yeah. It feels that way.
Yeah. So Mimic 3, released October 14th, 2003. So it's an older film. And written and directed by J.T. Petty. a guy that I've never seen any of his other films, but apparently he's a video game writer.
Oh, you haven't seen The Burrowers?
Oh wait, he did that?
Yes.
Huh? All right. So I've seen that. Okay.
That's a very, very good movie.
Okay, so I saw The Burrowers. I stand corrected, and
Okay.
but I don't think I've seen any of his other movies.
But did you say he's a video game guy? Because I was kind of wondering what happened to him. Like, he made a couple films and haven't really seen that name in a while.
Yeah, I barely recognize the name at all, and apparently he's gotten like absorbed into the video game world.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to ask my girlfriend if she knows who he is. That's her domain, video games.
Yeah. So some of the research I did said that the story was inspired by a short story, okay, by Donald A. Wollheim. Now, I don't know if the Sentinel Mimic 3 is inspired by that, but I know the original Mimic was inspired by a work, a piece of writing. So I don't know if they're saying that the concept, because it does tie into the original loosely, is I don't know. I don't think this. I haven't read the story, so I don't know if this is part of it or not, or they're just saying the original one from '97 was like inspired by it. So anyway, that's that.
Okay.
But the cast. Now he's not the main character, but I'm going to mention him first since he's, in my opinion, horror movie royalty. We got Lance Henriksen as the Garbage Man. We got Carl Geary as Marvin Montrose. We have Alexis Ziena as his sister Rosie. Keith Robinson as Desmond, the drug dealer. The great Amanda Plummer as Simone, their mother. And John Capellos as Detective Gary DeMars. All right. Now, that John Capellos guy, I think he had a career in the 80s in some of these, like, teen films.
Yeah, it was driving me crazy or what I recognized him from. I think he played the janitor in The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, he had that kind of janitor face. He's either a janitor or a cop.
Yeah, exactly. He was born to play a janitor or a cop, and always kind of like a sleazy-ish kind of dude.
Yeah. And we have Rebecca Mader as Carmen, one of their neighbors. And that's pretty much the main cast. And yeah. The film has a very...
Well, okay, let's start. What are your feelings on the first Mimic? Like, were you a fan?
Yeah, the first one was good. That was a Guillermo del Toro. Definitely like a bigger budget production. It was a major, I wouldn't say a major film, but it was in the theaters. I remember seeing it. I remember enjoying it. I thought it was cool. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin was in it, like.
That's right, he was.
Yeah. Mira Sorvino, the lovely Mira Sorvino was in that.
One of your favorites.
One of my favorites, absolutely one of my favorites, yes. And I thought it was cool. Mimic, I thought it was a cool story. It's about, it's like bioengineering gone crazy, and it was a monster film, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it was Del Toro's first American movie. I know I'm staring actually at the Blu-ray of the movie that I have. It's called Mimic the Director's Cut. So the version that's streaming on HBO Max or that played in theaters is not Del Toro's preferred version of the movie. I guess the Weinstein stepped in and really fucked with his movie. And although the Blu-ray is the director's cut, I believe I remember him saying something that, like, for a true director's cut, he would just have to remake the entire film. Like, it's not what he wanted. But, I mean, that said, I agree with everything you said about it. It was a fun monster movie, and, the seeds were there for what Guillermo del Toro would, eventually become, an Oscar-winning director.
Yeah, it's a very Del Toro film. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, from the get-go, this film has a very different feel to it. All right? And it's like from the very, very beginning, it was like, oh yeah, this reminds me of like a Hitchcock, like Rear Window kind of vibe. Even the title sequence, like the font that they use and all that.
Yeah, actually, I wrote down the same thing. Like,
Yeah, and I would say just the way it's shot, the way it looks. You know, it almost has like this Technicolor look to it.
yeah, I wrote down that it feels like a movie from the '90s trying to be a movie from the '60s.
Exactly. Yeah. So right then and there, it set the stage for me to enjoy this movie in a weird way. Even though, you know, like we'll get into some of the peculiarities of this film, but
Yeah.
also it's unclear as to where the hell this movie takes place too.
Yeah, I was going to actually mention that, John. Like, did you catch where this was supposed to be?
Well, everyone's speaking English, right?
Yeah.
However, it looks like it's in like the Czech Republic or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of adds to the bizarre feel of this movie.
Yeah. Like it's not in any American city that I've ever seen. And it looks looks like it's in Europe. Like even the flats that they live in have this very European like look to it and feel to it.
Yeah, I thought so too. Like, it would not surprise me if I looked up and this was filmed in, like, you know, the Czech Republic or something like that.
Yeah. So it looks like it's filmed in Eastern Europe. Everyone speaks English, and it has there's a scene where there's an American flag too. I don't know if you caught that.
I did not know.
Yeah, there's some random American flag like hanging up on a wall. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, so we're being led to believe that this takes place in the United States somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Even though I thought the lead actor had a very European look to him, almost like he's like the poor man's Tom Hardy or something.
Oh yeah, the lead actor Marvin, the guy who plays Marvin.
Yes.
He's like he looked like he was in like some kind of like post-punk band or something, you know. He had this like wispy like British look about him.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think he was the lead actor in The Burrowers as well.
Okay.
But I haven't seen him in much else.
Yeah, like he looks like he plays bass in a band that sounds like Interpol or something like that, you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, or he's like Interpol's touring bass player.
Yeah, touring bass these days.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting performance, I'll say.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the character Marvin, because he is the main character. So he's the voyeur, similar to the character in the Rear Window. He's, he has a some kind of medical condition where he's like hypersensitive to all sorts of sensory like inputs, like scent, like smells, and he's like a very sickly kind of diminished person.
Yeah, was it? No, I don't know if it's because I didn't see the second one or Mimic wasn't fresh in my head. Was this somehow like a condition? Like, does that carry over from the other films? It was a little kind of vague about what was wrong with him.
Unknown. I didn't watch the first two prior to watching this one, but it seems like his condition is definitely something that's fictitious, and it's like he picked it up somewhere, and I don't know, like he's a survivor of some sort of medical issue. But as a result of that, he's this super introverted guy. He's like kind of creepy. He's like always spying on his neighbors with with like his camera. He's taking photographs of random stuff. He's like a amateur photographer, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
So right away, we also meet his sister, who is like a little bit more of like a street kid. She's like has a friendship with the drug dealer. Like he's obviously like a little bit of a shady character, not necessarily a bad guy, but someone who's involved in just a street guy. You know what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, totally. And they live with their mother, Amanda Plummer,
who has kind of a restrained performance for her.
Yeah, I guess we should put the acting in this movie is all over the place. Like the lead actor playing Marvin, I mean, you don't really, he's not well, but he kind of plays it like he has some sort of like handicap or something in some scenes. It's very, very bizarre. Really strange performance.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's the sister's out on the streets having fun, tearing it up, and you know, doing drugs, whatever, like hanging out. She brings this girl over, Carmen, okay, and right away we see the affliction that this guy has. He's like, oh my, you smoke or whatever, and he's like goes into this like weird palsied, almost like a seizure.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a bizarre feature of his character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this movie is an hour and 16 minutes long. Doesn't it feel like maybe 20 minutes of this movie is just completely missing?
It seems like, yes, I agree. There seems to be like maybe they were a little too generous with the scalpel on this one. They were like a little too like they cut too much out of this film. It seems like
that's what it feels like to me, because I mean, like, this is a movie like that has almost no plot, no characters. It's got plenty of style.
Yeah,
it's a good-looking movie, but you don't know any of these characters. Like, it just sort of goes from scene to scene to scene, and with no connective tissue whatsoever.
Yeah, it's very stylish, definitely. And I think that's more what I'm responding to, is just the oddness of the way everything proceeds in the film. Like, the characters are so weird. Like, Marvin is like, you wonder whether or not it's like an emotional condition that he has or over his physical condition.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like I wanted to know more. Like, the seeds of a good movie are there. I just don't think they really did enough with it. You don't really understand fully what Marvin's condition is, or who these people are, what their dynamic is. Marvin refers to himself as a bubble boy at one point in the movie, but then you see him walking around outside with his sister.
And I'm going to mention something too that I picked up. The only person who he seems to have reactions to is Carmen. Like, when Carmen comes in and he's like, "You smoke," and she's like, "I had a cigarette outside," and then he sees her later at another scene. He's like, "Your perfume." And it's like, and he goes this bizarre, and it's like no one else seems to elicit any of those reactions from him, because we also have the cop comes to the house. There's a scene where he's out on the streets where there's all sorts of sensory inputs, like smells and sights and sounds and all, and he seems fine.
Yeah.
So it's something about Carmen, because that becomes like, later we see that there's a budding romance between the two of them.
Yeah, and again, like, that's an interesting idea. Why like, is this like a mental condition? But the film doesn't really explore anything.
Right, and that's a missed opportunity, because they could have explored that for sure.
Yeah, and then we gotta talk about the sister character. I mean, like, at one point she comes in and calls someone a corn cob. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone call another human being a corn cob.
Yeah, there's a couple of points in this film where the dialogue felt like it was written by someone who doesn't speak English as a first language, or someone who's not familiar with the sort of colloquial English that you and I would be familiar with.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a perfect way to put it. I got the same thing from that. That's the only that's the only way you can imagine a line like that.
Yeah. But J.T. Petty is American, right?
I think he is.
Yeah, or he's at least he's from like an English-speaking country. Probably should have looked this up before we started, but
well,
hey man, no one said we were pros here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Again, and like it almost feels like the acting in this is like an alien made this movie. Like, they don't really know how people interact with each other. Like, the sister, she has this really, I think she's trying, like, you're supposed to get, like you said, she's a little trouble. Maybe she parties. She's a little bit more carefree than Marvin, but I found the character grating almost every time she was on screen. Like, she has this really annoying fake laugh. It's like, it feels like you're watching a play put on by high school kids.
Yeah. And, all right, so J.T. Petty is from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. They definitely speak English there as a first language. So Yeah, I don't know what happened here.
So yeah, the story is the plot is very simple. Okay, people start disappearing in this neighborhood that they live in, and the neighborhood has like this vibe of like a, kind of like a, borderline sketchy neighborhood because we have, we got a drug dealer selling drugs out there, that's Desmond, and
yes.
Amanda Plummer, single mom, 2 kids, there's crime in the neighborhood, that sort of thing. But everyone thinks that the person behind all these disappearances is Lance Henriksen's character, the garbage man.
Right.
He's this shadowy loner that lives by himself downstairs from them.
Right, and Marvin is kind of spying on him. Lucky for Marvin, everything happens in front of windows with the curtains open.
Yeah, definitely, and so there's this surveillance aspect to the film too that is, I thought that was kind of cool. Like it's telling a story, and there's no real attempt at realism in this film, and I think that's it's a play. It's like this. It's almost like a play in some ways. Like there's like everything's overacted. There's like you're in a bizarre world, which you don't really. It doesn't feel like anything you've ever seen really in real life, but it's very close to real life.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's a great. I wrote that down as well. That this, like it feels like a little bit of a play, and people just don't act like normal people. The reaction, the movie starts with a kid being murdered, which I'm always for that.
You're always down for kids getting killed in movies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, all right, but there's no police presence. Like people just go missing, and then like when I think Desmond got killed. Not that this movie is dense and hard to follow, but things kind of happen in this movie, and I'm like, well, what just happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Desmond's out in the street, everything's lit really darkly, and then you just see blood, and Desmond's not in the movie anymore. So you just assume Desmond is gone; he's dead. And they call the police, and you get that Gary the cop comes over and. He's kind of a piece of shit.
He's like,
but he doesn't take him seriously.
No, they don't believe there's anyone's dead or there's murders or at that point they're thinking that Lance Henriksen's character is the murderer because he seems like the kind of guy that would murder someone.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's because of Mimic 3. Maybe you kind of that surprise is already kind of spoiled for you that it's really not him.
And then of course, Gary the cop starts banging their mom, and he's at the house all the time, which is like once again like such a bizarre like narrative point,
It is, and it just sort of happens. Like just like you see the scene where and then like a couple minutes later, it's like, oh yeah, he's banging the mom. Like it's not really.
There was nothing that even shows that they're even like attracted to each other at all. It's just like he's in the house. She brings out 2 glasses of wine, and he's like, "Well, I get off in 20 minutes." And then like 2 scenes later, he's at the house and they're in their bedroom, banging.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, I don't really have people because that's one thing I'm glad they addressed because he's like, yeah, I'll get some of my people on. I'm like, you're a detective. What people?
Yeah.
And then he later says, I just wanted to impress your mom. I don't have people.
I wish it was that easy to get someone to bang you as it is for Gary the cop.
Yeah. Gary the cop doesn't have a lot going on for him.
No.
But, he gets to sleep with Amanda Plummer. So good for him, I guess. But, and then, like, his character's out of the movie. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, this feels like almost like a dream you would have where, like, big chunks of it are missed. Things are happening, but all the major connective tissue just isn't there.
So back to the original world of Mimic. Okay, there's like this thing called the Judas strain.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where this story could have actually didn't necessarily, with a couple of flourishes of the pen, this didn't even necessarily have to be part of the Mimic series, really. This could have been a standalone sort of film. But
Yes.
what they connected it to Mimic with the whole Judas strain thing, which is like from the first movie. If I remember correctly, there was a whole thing about getting rid of vermin or termites or cockroaches or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So they developed this this thing where their metabolisms like speed up or something like that, and then as a result, years later, this like mutant fucking bug creature arises, and that's what this whole Mimic thing is.
Right.
So there's more of these, and that's apparently how that they're existing in this neighborhood. And it turns out that Lance Henriksen is not a garbage man. He's actually a scientist.
Great casting. Lance Henriksen, the scientist. Sure, I'd buy it.
Yeah, the guy. I mean, yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? It's just so there's this. He's like undercover apparently in this neighborhood, trying to like, and it's not even clear what his goal is in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Is he there to destroy them? Is he there to study them? Is he one of these, like, because, there's also in these films, there's always like that wild guy who like is trying to, monetize this like potentially, a potential threat to the existence of humanity,
Yeah.
So
his motivations were very unclear.
Yeah, it's not clear. And there's also these guys who originally they thought were cops, but are not cops. And it's not even really clear what they are.
That's right.
They just show up in the neighborhood.
Right.
And and I've seen this movie 3 times. Okay. And I have to tell you that I really don't know how any of this stuff figures out really into a cohesive storyline.
Oh, it doesn't.
Yeah.
At all. Like, there's no cohesive plot. And once it's popular with interesting characters and good ideas, but none of it comes to the surface. Like Lance Henriksen, like that character, like the movie, you could have used another, like some more backstory about him or what he was doing. At one point, he's ranting that humanity's over. I don't know. He was an interesting character. I wanted to see a lot more of him.
Yeah, this movie needed like another 10 minutes, I think, to round it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I say like it feels like it was I mean, like even like the editing in this movie, there's a lot of fade-ins and fade-outs. I don't know if that's a stylistic choice or just like they just had to. They couldn't edit it together in a cohesive way, so they do like fade in and fade outs. Like, at one point, the sister Rosie is like, talking on the couch. She thinks she might have witnessed her boyfriend/friend Desmond murdered, and then in the next scene, she's just kind of hanging out on a park bench. And like I feel like something was missing there.
Yeah, could be. So at the end, the film gets resolved, and yeah, it's like it kind of gets resolved. I don't know. Did they kill all the creatures, or was there going to be a Mimic 4 that comes out?
I couldn't even tell you who was alive at the end. I mean, I know for sure like some people were dead, but like it's sort of
Gary
like,
the cop gets killed, and Lance Henriksen.
Yes, Gary the cop gets killed like a couple scenes after he's like introduced. And again, like there's no weight to anything that happens because there are no characters in this movie. There's just people playing roles, but they don't have anything to play.
Yeah,
I feel like the character Marvin's he seems to be the only one trying to do something.
Amanda Plummer's character gets incinerated, so she's gone.
Well, she gets like stabbed by the bug.
Yeah.
What happened to the sister?
The sister survives. Because
I missed that.
After the bugs get blown up and Marvin hides in the refrigerator and they recover him, we also see that they recover the sister. She was somewhere, okay. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, what about Carmen? His love interest. So Marvin's he's in a hospital with like this plastic sheathing around him, and then Carmen appears and she comes in, touches his hand, and there's no reaction to her. Like it's not like he goes into this seizure or whatever. So it seems like they're going to be
Okay.
together, in a romantic
But
relationship.
I don't know if this was meant to be vague or they had maybe an idea planned out that they didn't shoot. But Carmen has to be dead. I mean, she is set on fire and then shot rather comically. I don't think it was meant to be funny, but I found it hilarious. And then Marvin blows up his house.
Well, that's why, like, the first time I saw the film, I was surprised that she was at the end. So do you think that, Marvin died and they're in some alternate, reality somewhere?
Yeah, it was a very bizarre ending. I don't see how anyone would have survived that. He was hiding in a refrigerator that had holes in it because the bugs were trying to get him. So when he blows up his house, I mean, maybe he might live, but he'd probably be burned and fucked up. But he looks fine in the hospital. But there's no way there's no way. She's holding his hand like everything's fine. Like, you were just shot and set on fire and then blown up.
Yeah.
You might have a scar or two. I also want to point out Carmen's reaction to when the mom is getting killed by the bug. It's almost like she didn't know the camera was on her. Like, she's just kind of like standing there. It's such a weird movie.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what is your breakdown of this film? What do you give this movie if you're going to rate it?
God damn, that's a good. I mean, okay. I like the director. I thought The Burrowers was one of the best direct-to-video horror movies ever made. It's really good. And S&M Man or Sandman, whatever it's called, is also good. So I kind of want to give this movie a pass in some ways, but it's terrible. It's not a good movie.
Okay.
But I enjoyed watching it. Like, it was very stylish. It was so utterly bizarre and that I was entertained. But I mean, if you're listening to this show, you'll get it. But I wouldn't recommend this to someone like, oh, hey, you want to check out a good horror movie? You got to see Mimic 3. I'll give it a 2 for entertainment factor. But
Okay.
really, I mean, it's not good.
I've given it a much higher score.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I give it a 3.5.
Wow.
Yeah. Despite all the things we've said about this film, I enjoyed it all 3 times that I watched it.
3 times?
Yeah.
Wow.
I watched it at Rennie's house, right? And I was like, man, this is a fucking tripped out movie. I was enjoying it as I was watching it because of how bizarre and odd it was. And then when I asked you guys about doing it on the show, I was like, well, I'll watch it again. Watch it again. And then, I try to watch the movies twice when we do them, and then the second time.
I do too.
And it was like, each time I watched it, I enjoyed it because of how weird it is.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of style going for it. Clearly, the director has a vision. I don't think he had a full grasp on it yet. I also feel like this movie was originally like 2 hours long, and they just chopped almost a full hour of it out of it. That's what it feels like. And, it's called Mimic 3. I don't think anyone was thinking too hard about it. They're like, just put this fucking thing on DVD and put it out there. People will rent it or buy it, It feels very thrown together and not a lot of thought went into it. But I will say this, the special effects, surprisingly pretty good.
Yeah, and they used probably the budget in their favor because everything's dark, and the bug creatures are pretty believable and they look cool too.
Yeah, they do. Like for a direct-to-video 2003 movie called Mimic 3, I was really expecting the worst in this, like really bad, shoddy CGI or something. But most of what you see looked practical and obviously, like you said, it's very like shot in shadows, and in some scenes you can't tell what's happening at all. But when you do get a look at these things, they do look cool and they do look, believable.
I recommend it at least as an oddity to check out. I'm not going to say that it's good, and I'm not going to say it's not good. You know what I mean? It's like it exists in the world, and I think if you're interested, if you want to just check out something that's weird, and take it in, then check this out. It's on Max right now, on HBO Max, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
All three of them are on Max.
It's an oddity for sure, but it's man, yeah. I had fun watching it, and it's only an hour and 16 minutes out of your life if you want to check this out. And I hope people do check it out and leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you thought of it, because I'm kind of at a loss for words for this one.
Well, the one thing I do give it props for is the approach of like the what the hell is his name? JT whatever. What's the dude's name? JT Petty.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, let me approach this like a Hitchcockian film, this like third installment in like, a series, and each one is diminishing in budget. So let me give it like a Hitchcock coat of paint and make it like, see what I can do with it. I appreciate that kind of hustle with somebody. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, yeah. Most like things like this would, direct a Sci-Fi Channel or whatever. Wouldn't have this level of stylishness to it. This I'll give him credit for that. I mean,
yeah,
definitely made it his own, but he definitely doesn't feel like he had the command of the like. It's almost like I can feel like, okay, he yelled action and then didn't tell anyone what to do during the scene. There's one scene where the sister's like, Marvin's talking to the cop, and the sister is kind of like bent over, like looking at her brother, shaking her head. She's like, what the fuck is she doing? It's almost like she had no direction at all.
Yeah, it could have been,
Yeah, it's a very bizarre. It's entertaining on that kind of level, but it's not good. I'm sorry.
And there you have it, man.
Yeah, please let us know what you think of this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week. Take care.
Take care.